Welcome to a special episode of the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast. Today we have a family. We have Sia, we have Eli, we have Arturo. How you guys doing?
Good.
Good. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for doing this in person, for coming in from California. Not just for this, but for stopping by and doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we appreciate you guys. So I want to get into it. And we'll start with you, Sia. So tell me about like your story, about where were your parents from, where did you grow up, like your first experiences being a child of immigrants in America.
So my parents came from Sierra Leone, West Africa, specifically Kwedu town, in the 70s. And so I got the benefit of not only being a first gen in these fine United States, specifically in the DMV, but also being a part of this vast village because there were a lot of relatives that had also come from the same place. And so, especially growing up in the 80s was fun.
Yeah.
I feel like my generation had so much fun because of the fact that they still had the village mentality and mindset, because it was nothing to always see cousins or just pop up at people's houses or say we're going to say, teladu means we're going to say hi. Yeah. And it would be like 9:30 at night. You don't have to call first. You just showed up and then it became a thing and we're laughing, having a good time. So it was really fun. The flip side of that was public school because it was in public school where you saw that you were different, right? I mean, because we were darker, it was like that thing. I mean, to this day, I have never scratched a booty in my life, but every day you were called an African booty scratcher.
Right.
And so, those experiences were negative. And then you come up, and I know for me, I was the oldest of three. So school was never like joke time. And that was one of the biggest things we were always taught. The reason we came is because in America, there's free public education. There's no excuse not to be able to do well, right? Because like my dad's village, very underdeveloped, and in Africa, it was a lot of countries. It's not just being able to afford the tuition. You have to be able to afford the uniform, the books, and if one piece is not there, you don't go to school, right? So here, it's like you get free lunch, right? You just show up, you have your clothes, you have this, like everything is provided for you. You are expected to do well. And as the oldest, the bar was always set high that, and even my name, because we are Konos, we name on birth order. So Sia is first girl. So as a Sia, the bar continues to raise like, you need to be exceptional in order to set, so the others will see, but also because now it's about village bragging rights. Cause that was the other part. I felt like the thing was like a lot of immigrant kids, we laugh because we'll say, well, the point of coming to America was for your kids to do well so that you could send your parents home to flex in the village. Be like, you see my house, my kids bought that. Yeah. So, and for me, education was like, I've always been a voracious reader, but I think it was part of the work ethic they put in us as far as like nothing comes before school, to the exclusion of like dating or, liking boys or whatever. It was like, I knew not to even bring it up because what was your last grade in math was the topic of conversation. So like going to college was like, and I always tell people, there's a disconnect because immigrants know you got to go to school to do well, to get a good job. But there's the social aspects they didn't really, like the networking. We didn't really get that as much, but it was important. I remember, the process. And it was hard because I was the oldest, walking my parents through like FAFSA, right? The whole process of like the college tours. If you're the oldest, you become pseudo parent because you have to learn the systems, teach it to your parents. Then if you have siblings, they just, then you should just do it since you already know it. So I remember scheduling the college tours and telling them like FAFSA's coming up in 2 weeks. I need this, that. And they were like, this is intrusive. You need all my information, and so doing all that to be able to say, okay, yes, and then going to school. I don't know if I had the time to process the social, emotional being away from home because your mindset is just, I need to do well. That's what's going to fuel you so that because you're the first, you have to break down all the barriers. So my educational career, I would say, I ended up, I went to Bowie State for undergrad. Yes, BSU. Went to Florida A&M for grad school and did journalism. And then I also went to Oral Roberts and got a Master of Divinity. And at that point, my parents were like, we don't want to go to any more graduations. Now you need to focus on getting married. Because after education, then it's like, okay, what type of wife will you be? And then but all of it is like culturally, you know, it all ties in that way.
Okay, no, I love that, and we'll come back to that. But Eli, tell us about your experience, your trajectory as a child of immigrants, also.
Oh, well, I don't know if I could go into detail like my wife did. Well, again, I am a first generation Mexican. My mom and dad are from a small town in the state of Zacatecas called Morelos. That's where they met. But prior to them coming, my grandfather, my dad's father, was part of the Bracero program during World War II, where there was a need for farm workers. So my grandfather did that. He did his little thing, and then he went back to Mexico. And then a few decades later, after my father was born and his siblings, when my dad was a young adult, he was the first to come to America. Worked. He liked the American way of life, and he decided, well, you know what? I'm gonna help all my other siblings come out, and that's what he did. And this was in the early '60s, you know, and brought my grandmother, my grandfather, his mom and dad, and then the siblings came out, and they started assimilating into the American way of life. You know, my grandparents bought their first home in Oakland. This was in Oakland, California. And, you know, my aunts and uncles, I remember them as a kid. They were already, you know, teenagers or young adults, and just going to visit my grandparents on the weekends for like family dinners. It was just a good time. You know, those were good memories that I had. School, okay, well, my whole schooling was in Oakland. I went to several elementary schools. We moved a little bit. But for junior high, I went to Havenscourt Junior High, and those were the best years of my life with junior high. I was in band. I participated in wood shop, and we had metal shop too. So a lot of schools don't offer that, especially in the inner cities. But back then, this was like the late 70s, early 80s, and you know, I learned a lot, you know, taking those classes, and I enjoyed those times in junior high. But prior to going to high school, my dad decided, well, let's go move out to Mexico. You know, he was thinking about buying some property, you know, being connected with family members out there, because he had been in California in the United States for so long. And he wanted us to be connected with our culture, you know. So we were more Americanized than anything. I didn't speak any Spanish, didn't know any Spanish. I did understand it, but I really didn't interact. You know, my mom and family members would, especially aunts and uncles and grandma, would talk to us in Spanish, but we would always respond in English. So we moved. It was quite a shock for me, you know, because you know, in those times, you know, the American culture, way of life wasn't that prevalent like it is now in Mexico. So I had to learn the hard way how to speak Spanish. And, you know, little by little I did. And we spent several years out there. They enrolled me in high school, but it was a little difficult for me, you know, the language barrier. And then just, they're a whole new system, the metric system, and, you know, we're the only country in the whole world that's not on the metric system. So that was another obstacle for me. So it didn't pan out. You know, I tried, it didn't work out. So what ended up happening was that, you know, we had some family members that were, I don't know how you say it in English, lecheros. Those are like milk people. They would go to ranches and pick up the milk in those steel drums, and we would deliver it to different stores after we picked it up from all these other farms. And that's what I did, you know, just to, you know, do something.
So what I'm hearing a lot, though, is just a strong connection, like how important family is, right, from both of you. And what sort of grounding that, you know, gave you, you know what I mean, to have, you know, you talked about your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, and that's vital, You know what I mean? So what sort of boost does that give you as you're going through these experiences for both of you? Like when you have such a, like the village behind you, like what Sia mentioned, and you essentially had a village also, but how much confidence and grounding does that give you as you're going through the world, and you especially, you're going from America back to Mexico and then coming back here, but still knowing that your family's there, like how comforting was that experience?
I think it was very comforting because what my dad was trying to teach us was to be proud of who we were and where we came from.
Yeah.
And I think if he hadn't have done that, I probably wouldn't have that that feeling of pride of being a Mexican.
Right.
You know, this country has, you know, just a history of indoctrinating people of immigrants into the American way of life, right? And ignoring where they were from and where they came from.
Yeah.
And I think my dad knew that, and I totally respect what he did, and I'm a proud Mexican. I'm American.
Yeah.
Yes, I served my country too, you know.
Absolutely.
And but I'm a Mexican. You know, it's in my blood, and it's in my son's blood.
Yeah.
You know, well, half of it.
Yeah.
And I'm just really grateful for my dad for doing that.
Yeah.
You know, for all of us,
Yeah.
my siblings.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, right? Because that's a huge part of your identity. And you alluded, you know, that's the first thing I think you started off by saying about the village, you know, when everyone came, and just having a strong sense of self, you know what I mean? Like, and how crucial that is as you're navigating, you know, American culture, you know, coming from, you know, another country, you know. So Sia, talk to us about, you know, we kind of got the whole, you know, quick run through, but go back to like when in your high school days, as you're in high school, as you're coming through, and especially being the oldest sibling, and you're raising the standard, setting the standard, you're raising the bar, you're paving the path for everyone to come behind you. What were some careers that you were looking at? What were you thinking about becoming, you know, as you're in high school? Like, what are you exploring? What are you thinking about? And then also, I'm gonna give you context. Do you feel like your parents have expectations, or the village has expectations for you to do certain things that maybe maybe they're not saying it explicitly, but maybe you think that they expect you to do this?
I'm laughing because I remember when I came out of high school and I wanted to declare a major, and I had always wanted to be a lawyer, right? So I said, I'm going to be a political science major. And most immigrants' kids have to change their major, especially if you come from a country of coups and uprisings, because your parents look at you like, are you crazy? And anything that has to do with like politics, they're like, no, change that major, that you will not make any money. Because almost some of them are also of the mindset that like, unless you say engineering or medical school, then everything else is trash. But I remember I was so enamored, and I think I did like science from the standpoint of wanting to fix people in surgery, but I think the math scared me from wanting to get into that. I liked, the thing that was cool was, as long as one of us went through it, like you could talk to the other cousins to find out. And then it almost was like a competition to be like, well, where's so-and-so? Where are they going? What are you doing, right? And then sometimes your parents used it as ammo to be like, look at you. You're not doing anything. So look at them. They went to medical school. You're just sitting here. So you kind of use that to be like, oh, okay, I can go further. But I feel like the best part was always, even when you went to gatherings or you talked to uncles, and I was always amazed at how many people were like doctors or engineers in the village. But here, you know how sometimes the American system will play you and they'll be like, oh, the credits didn't transfer, so you just have to be a janitor. Or a lot of people were driving cabs that were accomplished people, and this is just a means to, you know, taking care of my family while I navigate how do I get that same career going here.
Absolutely.
And so even when you see them at a party and uncle is sitting there with his Heineken, he's still saying, well, how is school going? You know, what do you plan to do? You know, what everyone always wants to understand, what is the plan? Because I think that, you know, Africans, I always say they teach you to be strategic, to figure out what do you have, what do you need, who is even in your circle? And that part, I think, is where I understood now, oh, they did try to tell us about networking. Because they'd be like, show me your friends and I'll show you your character. Or who's the smartest person in your group? Change the group. So you would hear things like that. You know, and then, man, report card day was tumultuous because like, if there was anything less than an A, like B's would even be like, for what? Like, what stops you from getting an A? Or, you know, you'd be excited. Like, I mean, well, it was, and don't never tell an African parent, oh, it was an 87, because they're going to ask you what happened to the other 3 points. So, you know, that part, always setting the bar, always, you know, asking you to think ahead, to be strategic. And I was, you know, just even thinking about my career trajectory, very important. And even some of the things we try to impart into him.
So, and what it sounds like also is that you embrace the competitiveness.
Yes.
Right? And you actually took on the responsibility that comes with being the firstborn. You know what I mean? So you didn't run away from it, you didn't shy away from it. It seems like you took it, you used it as fuel, and you really challenged and pushed yourself, as opposed to letting that get in the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I mean, I think it's set the stage for also, like, because I've been in the nonprofit sector forever, but always making it a point to take advantage of the professional developments in order to get you to where you want to be. I feel like that is a continuous, you know, because my mother used to always say, well, what else can you do? Right? You would be excited about your little 3.7. She'd be like, that's nice. What else can you do?
Yeah.
As the bar to say, okay, that was nice, but you can always keep going further. So.
Coming over to you. So when you're in high school, are you back in California? Did you do part in Mexico and part in California?
When we left, had just finished graduating from junior high. So we spent a good majority of the time in Mexico, about almost 3 years.
Yeah.
So I lost 3 years of schooling.
Yeah.
You know, so coming back to the United States, I vaguely remember trying to go back, but I vaguely remember them saying that, you know, so many years have passed, so you're just better off just doing a GED, or just get your GED certificate. And it's what I ended up doing, and you know, got that. And I did attend in Oakland. They had a summer youth program through community outreach, sponsored by the city of Oakland, and they would help you find summer jobs and things like that. And then also I took classes. They had classes for just basic stuff, you know, just learn a trade or something. So they got me a job at Highland General Hospital as a summer job, and I did do that for that summer, and only to find out that I had an uncle who was working at there. He had been there for several years. And he told me, you know, they're getting ready to hire some people. You know, it's a county. Since this hospital is funded by the county, you're in the pension system and all that. And one thing led to another. You know, I applied. It took about a year to become full time, and at that time I hadn't turned 18 yet. And just before I turned 18, they offered me a full time position. And I took it, and I just retired recently from that job. 5 years later.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome, man. So what do you guys? You know, you talked earlier about Arturo, about, you know, like those experiences that you had from your family, and wanting to pass that on to them. So what are some, especially like with your dad, the fact that your dad came here, he brought his family, took you guys back, identity is important. Like, what are some of those experiences that you've had, right, that you feel like these things really help to enrich my life, that you want to make sure that you, like, continue with him? Like, what are some of those things?
I'll go. I think about some of the cultural understandings, right? Like, for example, there's certain things that were ingrained in us that I see come out as an adult. For example, if somebody passes away, you never send a text. You call or you show up, you know, and we call it, you know, for telposing osh, you're coming to sympathize or whatever. And I remember trying to explain to him that there's a lot of similarity between the two cultures, where if someone passes, you know, people fill the house so you don't feel the loss. You know, you're bringing food, you're coming over. They do the rosario.
The rosario.
Yeah, where they're reading the verses and people are eating and just trying to comfort the family. But, like, there are things I want him to learn as far as making sure to keep the lines of communication open. You know, Everson, you know, you call people, you make sure you know, check on your elders, respect for the elders. I remember when we were dating, that was one of the conversations, and I was like, he asked me about if his mother ever had to come live with us, would that be a problem? And I was like, I feel like it's only white people that put their families in homes. And we laughed because I was like, Africans are the same. Like, you keep everybody there and they're just around and they help you, you know, it just continues. So I think about that. I also think about, like, you know, the dowry, that, you know, the tradition of formally asking for the woman's hand and greeting the family, and he had to go through all those things. It was fun. But making sure that he knows, you know, even down to the names, because Sia is a Kono name, connoting, you know, first girl. His middle name, Tamba, is second boy. So being able to continue, and a lot of us have continued that tradition with our children to ensure that they have that sense of, like, knowing who you are and where you come from. So, and then the food. Oh my gosh, yes, I see. Food is so important because, like, I know hubby does the majority of the cooking, but I do some African dishes, and making sure he's exposed to all of it.
I love that, and I think it's because it's a recurring theme from both of you guys, right? Like, how important family is. You know what I mean? And those lessons are important to pass on to him, and the fact that you guys are intentional about doing that, because that's exactly what your parents did with both of you. You know what I mean? So tell me about, like, how do you plan on exposing him to, like, you know, like, in terms of, like, a career, like, nurturing him based on the lessons that you guys have learned, in terms of how you found, you know, the work that you did, how fulfilling the work is, and compared to what you thought you'd be doing versus what you ended up doing, like, and how are you going to help him sort of, like, navigate, you know, that part of his life?
Well, and like I said, in my upbringing, my parents, they didn't say, well, you need to be this or you need to be that. They just, I guess they just encouraged me to do well in school. And, you know, my dad was a hardworking man, you know, and he instilled that in me. And I guess what I really want for him, my son, Arturo, I just like to guide him and help him and hopefully he makes a decision, a good decision on what his career path should be. And I really don't want to be that type of parent that tells him, look, this is what you have to be, this is what we expect of you. I'm more of encouraging him to be who he thinks he is going to be. You know, obviously we both want him to be successful in life, you know, and personally and professionally, right? So that's what we both want. They're just the best for him.
Yeah, I've been doing a good job of the subtle brainwashing since before he came out. I mean, I would read to him in the womb, right? And we had the little speakers on there. I am the mom who had built his library before I had realized, oh, he has nothing to wear. Okay. Making it a point to expose him to language, because, you know, you hear the statistics about our children and how some entering school, they're at a disadvantage. And so even we enrolled him in school at 2 because, and made sure it was a school that had an actual curriculum. Because for me, I want for him to make informed choices. I want for him to have access to resources, and then also being able to navigate, understanding what it means to be strategic even at his age. I really want him to be able to do things like that. But then there's all the other things. You want him to be kind, but you also want him to be shrewd. And so taking advantage of teachable moments, and paying attention. And I tell him that more is caught than taught. So sometimes it's not about what you say to him. He's paying attention to even our energy. Like I was, because we'll play and I'll be like, is that how you want your son to treat women? So all of those things I feel like are important, and we're like subtly trying to just introduce them, and you know, hopefully he's getting all of that.
No, I love that. And so, being the children of immigrant parents, right? What superpowers you feel like, you know, you were equipped with? You know what I mean? Like, what sort of advantage did you have from having parents, you know, who are immigrants? Like, when you look back on it now, and based on the trajectory of where you are, you know, personally, professionally, and as a parent, like, what were some of the advantages you think that you got from, you know, having immigrant parents?
this is gonna sound weird, but because of the fact that we didn't grow up under the backdrop of like an African American, it almost feels like you could do, like I can talk to anyone basically, and it's not one of those things, because you know how depending on where you are, those who are non-melanated will try to make you feel inferior. But for me and for us, like as an African, you're not taught to look at your skin as a barrier. If anything, you're smarter than everybody in the room, and you're taught from that lens. So you can walk into any environment, and for me, that has helped as far as navigating some of the social constructs, or hearing people say, like the whack microaggressions, where someone will say, "Oh, that's very articulate," and you know, you can come back quickly as opposed to sitting there being offended, because it's like, I'm an educated person. What do you mean? And so for me, that is like one of the biggest superpowers, is like, and it served me well, especially when I'm thinking about working with funders or philanthropists and foundations. And it's always about being strategic and doing the work and figuring out what are the alignments, and then going in there. I'm not going in there, you know, as someone who feels like I'm less than, but more so like, we're gonna match wits, and I'm going to get what I need to get.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's grounded and rooted in self-identity, self-awareness, which is also seeps into your self-esteem, right? So it gives you high self-esteem, like a strong sense of self. And that's where the whole identity piece comes in.
Yes.
Right? So you feel the same way, Eli?
Yeah, the same way. I mean, growing up in Oakland, back in the late 60s, early 70s, and then in the 80s, my dad, my family, and they instilled the proudness of being a Mexican, you know, but they didn't like force that upon me. I would say we were a minority at that time, because in Oakland in that period it wasn't what it is now. You know, it was predominantly more African Americans, and that's who I grew up around. Those were people that I associated with, and families, and you know, we were close with some neighbors of ours. You know, we would go; they would invite us over for dinner and such. And that's and my parents were, you know, just because they're not the same skin color as you, that doesn't mean that they're less than or better than. You know, we're all equal. You know, and my dad always said that, you know, as long as you're hardworking, respectful, things will always. Life should always be about being kind towards other people that are not like you, or don't look like you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I always felt that way growing up, and I always treat everyone the same way, and I think that because of my parents, well, not more than I think I thank them for that. You know.
I love how you both answer that from your vantage point, but in terms of those lessons and those having a strong sense of self, right? Good self-esteem, how do you plan on, you know, based on the parenting dynamic culturally, how do you plan on like giving, you know, your child, you know, like coupling those superpowers to kind of give him, you know, almost like an unfair advantage? Like, what are some of those, you know, things that, you know, when you blend these two cultures together and you, you know, you have the experiences that you guys have had, now you're able to really prepare him to be, you know, pretty formidable, right? Even if it just means as a great human being, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like he gets the best of both worlds. I remember there was a picture, there's a black and white picture of his parents and my parents that I have, it hangs in our house, and I posted it on Facebook. And I was like, this is the stock from where he comes from. You have people who are hardworking, the sense of family, the ethic, but the importance of being educated. And I think sometimes when people think educated, they limit themselves to just what you can get in school or the formal setting out of a book. Because my father is probably one of the sharpest, most shrewdest, like he's a people reader, right? And then Daddy navigates and pays attention. You know, he's surveying he's reading the room. And I take a bit of that, right? Because I think I get a lot of that from him, because Daddy can talk to any, Daddy's a charmer, like all the things. And we want Arturo to have that same sense of like, I'm also book smart, but I can read the room. Yeah. I'm also have a sense of like, what do I want to accomplish? And then setting a plan to get there. Yeah. So, yeah.
There are a lot of similarities between our dads, you know. my dad didn't have a formal education. I think he only went up to like the 3rd or 4th grade. But he was a very shrewd man, very smart. He was able to, when he came to America, to, you know, get a piece of that American dream, you know, purchase a house, getting a good job. He was a Teamster for many years. And I think that because of that, that those similarities that between our dads, I feel that we could instill that in our son. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, so Sia, going back to what you said something earlier about your dad, right? About and with a learning, you said something about learning comes, you pick up more than you were told.
More is caught than taught.
More is caught than taught, yeah. So give us some examples of that for you, and then Eli, I'll come to you also, like where, you know, outside of school, right, or even just outside of your parents, you know, teaching you, like what are some lessons that you caught on to in like sort of like the most surprising places that really serve you well today?
I remember, this is one of the funniest memories, was Mommy had always, I think my mother used to always say to us, if I lay down tonight and don't wake up tomorrow, what are you people going to do? And for her, she used to always say it was the importance of being self-sufficient, especially for her girls. She was like, when you get your education, nobody can tell you anything. And thinking ahead. And I remember she would all, like when we all first got jobs, everybody had to start like chipping in. She would like, and then when we got to a good age, she picked a utility. Which one is yours? And it was like, you have to prepare yourself to live in this world because we will not always be here. And I remember one year, this was the fateful year, it was back to school time, and everybody had a summer job. You know, he was out there buying Cinnabon, thinking he was living life, right? And she came in, and she had bought all of these fresh, I mean, this is when Guess jeans was in their heyday. So you saw the triangle. He was like, oh, we're going to be doing it this year, okay? So there was Guess jeans. It was like notebooks, everything we needed for school. And we went to step, and she was like, pause. Everybody had a job this summer. Yeah. And then she started laying out the pricing for everything. And we were like, what? Yeah. And she was like, oh, yeah. If you intend to wear any of this or use any of these things, you're going to pay for them. Yeah. I mean, it was like the rug got snatched. We were sitting there, we were so hurt. I mean, fresh Reeboks, everything was laid out. She was like, yes. She said, because you all need to remember, you need to prepare for this school year. I've been, you know, she had been getting on us and everything. I mean, I remember the lessons of, we were in elementary school and we had to do our own laundry. And we would come from school and we would take, and we lived in this apartment complex where we put all, she would separate, you had to know how to separate. And we would have to carry the bags on our heads, and we would go down to the laundromat. Other kids would be laughing, and Mommy was like, that's fine. And it didn't hit me until college. And I'm in the dorms with people who could not sort laundry. And I was like, are you people for real? Yeah. And it was like, wow, all of these, I mean, people were turning whole loads of white clothes pink because they accidentally left something red in there. And I was like, that's basic, because we had been taught those things. Things like how to fill out a checkbook, to do the recorder. I remember all of those lessons that she would like, sit here, pay attention to this, because she was like, if I'm not here, does everything stop? You have to keep it going. So those are the types of things that I remember, you know, with Mommy and planning. And even with him, I think I try to instill that, because I tell him, one of the things I don't like is culturally, a lot of third world or just other communities, when the girls just aspire to be a wife. I feel like that's That's it? Yeah. Because there has to be more. And I was like, there are times when I'm like, dang, see, are you asking too much? Yeah. But I hate especially when, you know, and I tell him this, in the Mexican culture, I see a good amount, but it's also in ours, women who are with someone and you can tell it's not a happy union.
Yeah.
And the person is just stuck because they didn't get educated. They didn't even get a trade.
Yeah.
So you're just staying with this person because this is your livelihood, and I can't go out there and start over.
Yeah.
And to me, that like burns my soul, because I feel like, especially as a woman, get your education.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond, yes, I like this person, that's wonderful, but you need to be able to write your own ticket. And I would hate for you to be stuck somewhere because you didn't build the skills or set a plan up for what you were going to be doing. So that also is important for me, for him, where I'm like, a college, I always say college is not for everyone, but a plan is.
Yeah.
So.
No, I love that. So what about you, Eli? Are there any lessons that you learned that weren't necessarily taught to you, but you just sort of recognized them along the way that served you well?
It's okay.
Again, the similarities between our cultures and our family. It was the same thing too. We had to stand on our own 2 feet, as far as getting a job. When we got our first job, we had to be more responsible with. My dad would say, now that you're working, you're almost a grown man, you start helping out with the bills, just to. Again, like my wife is saying, they teach us some lessons. And for example, when I bought my first car, I could have asked my dad to co-sign, but I knew what he was going to say. He was going to say, no, you could do it on your own. You might get a crappy APR or whatever, but you're going to get it on your own. And I did. I got the car on my own. I did get a crappy APR. I did pay a lot, but I kept the car until the car didn't work anymore, and I paid it off. And I learned that I was building credit, and the credit's good, I guess, in this country, they say. But those are like some of the lessons, just being a hardworking individual, and life will come a little easier for you. Yeah.
No, I love it, man. And I really appreciate you guys coming and doing this with us, sharing your story. I think the last question is that we said we're going to talk about the wedding.
The wedding. Yes.
I would like to say, especially in this era where DEI has taken a hit, that our wedding was the DEI event of the year. During that time, it was amazing. I think for both of us, it was important that we incorporated both cultures, because you have two very loud, dominant cultures. You have Africans on one side and Mexicans on the other. So, I mean, coming in, you just had to assume the rice was going to be fire, right? Because it was two different types.
Different types of food.
It was great because we had a DJ who incorporated both sides as far as music.
Yeah.
We had.
Who would have ever thought that the similarities in the music?
Yeah.
Everybody got up to dance. I mean, everybody. It was lit. It was like everybody had a ball at the wedding. And going into it, I wasn't really concerned about it. On my side of the family, or with her side of the family, because I met her side of the family. What was it, like a year prior to us getting married? And they were so open and loving, and the wedding was just awesome.
But he honored the culture. I think that's part he's skipping over, where we did a scaled down dowry, and I call it rice with friends, because I was like, it's supposed to be bigger, elaborate, and I was like, okay, let's just, for the sake of honoring my father and my mother who had passed, I was like, we have to do that part. It's also for the respect sake. And also because I think, it made my dad extremely proud. And in him doing these things, it was like, wow, okay, very respecting, honored us, made it a point to include us. And so like the wedding itself, we had it in a traditional old school Mexican church, and we incorporated the aras and the, what's the lasso?
The lasso, Los aras, I guess they're called.
Okay, and the coins, right? Yeah. We did it that way. When we got to our reception, we changed because most of us African, it's like you change into the African attire for the reception. So he had an outfit made, and his brothers were like, well, how come we didn't get outfits made?
They were the groomsmen.
They were the groomsmen. So, we wanted to, but then we were like, well, the wedding is going to be held in California, so we won't make everyone incur that expense. But just making sure to include those things, allowing Daddy the opportunity. I mean, both sides got to have their music played when it was like, okay, the mother of the groom, the father of the bride, and then a lot of my cousins showed up wearing the ashabi, and then the Mexicans were there, and then it just got to the point where middle of the night everybody was just on the floor dancing, you know. And then the cool thing was everyone was sampling each other's foods. Yeah. So we had a caterer who was Mexican, and my aunts did a lot of the cooking. Shout outs to Auntie Marie, Auntie Lily, and all of them. And they made a lot of the great African dishes. And so people were just like sampling, like, oh, I've never had this before, or, you know, and vice versa. So that part, it was just really fun, just seeing everybody come together, embracing, learning, you know.
No, I love that. And thank you for sharing that with us, man. He's an excellent representation of this wonderful union.
Yes.
So thank you guys. We really appreciate you, stopping by on your East Coast visit.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You want to sign us out, Arturo? You want to say bye-bye?
Thank you.
All right. So we'll see you next time on the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast.